Welcome, everyone. Baruch Shechianu v'kiyamanu v'giyanu lazman hazeh to the Shabbos Hagadol Drosha of Tavshin Pei Daled. It's a very mazel dika time for a yid. It says, Mishenichnas Oder Ma'arbim B'Simcha V'Kol Shechei Nisan. At the same time, Klal Yisrael is going through an Eis Tzara now, with enemies surrounding it on all sides. The Hezbollah, the Hamas, Iran from a distance. It's a time of Geula, redemption. Hashem should bring us a personal redemption, a contemporary redemption, and Amir Hashem, the Geula Shleima, B'mher v'yameinu. We always start off with Akar Satayv to TorahAnytime.com for their giving us a platform in 187 countries to spread Torah. I know that TorahAnytime.com is having a campaign now where they're trying to raise money. Everyone is urged to participate. We thank Kol Haloshen for giving us their magnificent global network, and also Torah Communications Network, YouTube, Facebook, our subscribers, our Zoomers, and the wonderful people here in our flagship station at Aguda Zev of Fairways, Lakewood. Tonight, we have very special sponsors. You know, when I looked at the dashboard on TorahAnytime.com, after New York, the second most viewers I have on a regular basis is really fascinating, is from the UK. And we have a sponsor from the UK, Jacob and Jenny Morrison Wood from Boreham Wood, UK, who are sponsoring it that they should have Zisa Delicious Shalom Bayis, Hatzlachin Ruchnias and Gashmias, for the release of all the hostages, for the safety of our brave soldiers, and the safety of Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael all over the globe. We're also sponsored by my dear Zoomer Talmud, Yitzi Fuchs, who's dedicating it lovingly for our Chaver Adaf, Rabbi Kranz, Yaakov Avadia ben Freda Rivka. He should have a refuah shalema b'sei sharcha Yisrael, and he should have no worries and an easy, pleasant, healthy life. And Yitzi is also asking that Hashem should bench him in the schus of our learning with parnasa berevach u'v'chavoid, zisa gezunta shalom bayis, nachas from the family, and everything wonderful. The shir is also being sponsored by Chaverim from Staten Island, anonymously, Lili Nishma Shmuel ben Yitzchak, Mendel ben Shimon, Chaya Pesa bas Chaim, and for Refuah Shalema, for Shlomo HaKayin, I'm not sure, I think it's Shlomo, it says Lishlomo there, but I don't know what that means, but it's probably Shlomo HaKayin ben Miriam, and Yeshua ben Chana, that they should have a Refuah Shalema b'sei sharcha Yisrael. I also received an email from someone who is a dedicated Talmidah of this year, and I didn't find confirmation about it, but even so I want to mention that she's dedicating the shir that her child and her niece should find a shidduch hagun easily and quickly. We know that the only food that's formally on the menu in Shulchan Aruch by the Seder is an egg. On the Seder plate, on the kara, there's a beya, an egg. And I say that the only food, which is what I thought, although in the Mesivta Haggadah I found a minig that I never heard of before. The Orchos Chaim, which is one of the halachic recorders of, authentic minhagim, brings down that the Ramban says that there are people that eat a dish of shimur on the night of the Seder. I have to be honest with you. I had to look up in Google Translate what shimur was. I know shmurim are sediments, but I didn't think it was a dish of sediments. So it's fennel. So the Ramban had a minhag to eat fennel. Fennel is a very healthy food. A lot of people eat fennel. The Ramban had a minhag to make a cooked dish of shimur because it's Leil Shimurim, a night of protection. And therefore he ate fennel. We know that this is not, funny. The Yesod V'Shorish Avodah says that on the night of the Seder, Simona Milsa, that's why we say the 15 Simona, which we'll get to later, Kadesh Urchatz Karpas. So he had a minhag to eat a cooked dish of fennel to remember that it's a Leil Shimurim, it's a night of protection. It's a night of protection because it was on this night that Daniel was taken out of the den of lions and was protected. On this night, Avram Avinu successfully battled the 4 kings and their mighty armies just with Eliezer with him. It was on this night that Haman was hung. So it's a night, on this night, the legions of Sancherib were wiped out with his 400,000 men, even though at that time Klal Yisrael didn't even have an army. So they had a custom to eat fennel. But we don't have that custom. At least nobody that I know of has that custom. There are a lot of customs that, there's a famous Sfas Emes. The Sfas Emes says that why are there so many different minhagim on the night of the Seder? So many different minhagim. You talk about this one, what do you use for karpas? I use potato and parsley. No, I use celery. I use radish. Rav Sternbach used cucumber. So many minhagim. Everything. Some people do aseba by karpas. Some people don't do aseba by karpas. Some people use beautiful silver kaises. Some people use glass. There's all kinds of minhagim. Some people let the children steal the afikoimim. Other people pay the children money not to steal the afikoimim because it's Eichel to Korban Pesach, and Korban Pesach needs shmira, and they don't want to teach their children to steal. There's so many minhagim. I mean, whichever way. So the Sfas Emes says, it says that we were saved in Egypt because we didn't change our tongue, our language. We didn't change our names, and we didn't change our clothing. He says those are all minhagim. So we were saved because of minhagim. And that's why there's so many minhagim on the night of the Seder. Do you know that in certain places, the minhag was to have by the Seder egg drop soup? They didn't have an egg. They had egg drop soup. There's all kinds of minhagim. I was thinking this year, I'm not home. I'm going away with my family. But if I was home, I think that I would choose to have on the menu for the Seder meal cooked tongue. That would be a perfect main dish for the Seder. At the Seder, we're not allowed to have roast. We do that because the Korban Pesach was roast, and it shouldn't look like we're eating a korban outside of the Beis Hamikdash, which is an Isser Karos. So that's why we don't have any roast. So everybody's struggling, what could they serve nice, the covered Yom Tov, that's not roast? Well, I got a great idea, tongue. Because as we're going to talk about extensively tonight, on Pesach, the challenge is Pesach, Pesach. The mouth should talk the right way. Pesach. Soch in Aramaic is to talk. So Pesach is Pesach. The antithesis of Paro, Perah, the foul mouth. Right? So we know that one of the reasons why we eat an egg by the Seder is it's brought down that there's an opinion that on the first day of Pesach, Avraham Avinu passed away. So as a sign that our founder passed away, we eat an egg, which is a symbol of mourning. Egg is always a symbol of mourning. That's why we serve it by the Sudas Havrah, by the meal of the mourner. We serve the comforting meal. We serve an egg. First of all, because an egg is seamless. It doesn't have a mouth. And a mourner is struck with silence and grief. And also because an egg is round, right? The middle of the egg is perfectly round, because it's to show that grief is a galgal achayze ba'olam. It's a cycle that comes to everyone, right? So we eat an egg because of the mourning of Avraham Avinu. Now, what happened Erev Pesach? Avram served to the three angels described as nomads, as Arabic nomads. He served tongue with mustard. So don't you think it would be very appropriate to have on the menu tongue? It's a perfect food. It also, by the way, is luxurious food, which you don't have to eat too much of, because you can't eat too much. After you finished the matzah, the romaine lettuce, then the korech. If you eat more, then by the afikomen, you're going to be full. Now, you can't be full when it comes to the afikomen. The afikomen is supposed to be eaten al hasoiva, that it should cap off, not be an achila gasa. You can't come to the afikomen, I can't fit the matzah in my mouth. You're not yotzi. And the afikomen is the treasure of the night. Tongue is perfect. You could eat a little bit of it, maybe with some, condiment. You eat a little bit of it, and it's a hush of a thing. So I recommend highly for the Seder menu, even though it's not my job. I'm not a cookbook, but I think tongue is an excellent choice. But anyway, what we have specified on the menu is an egg. Now, the Ramah tells us that, first of all, the egg represents mourning, that we don't have a Beis Hamikdash. So we can't bring the centerpiece of the Seder night is supposed to be the Korban Pesach. We can't bring the Korban Pesach. We don't have a temple. So the egg represents mourning. The egg also, on the kara, there's two roasted items. The zeroah, the neck or the shank bone, which recalls the Korban Pesach. And together with it, they brought a Korban Chagiga. This was because if you had a lot of people by your Seder, and they only got a small piece of the Korban Pesach, they won't be full. And therefore, we also slaughtered a Korban Chagiga. So the Zorah represents the Korban Pesach, the egg represents the Korban Chagiga, and we're mourning that we don't have that now. The Gaon, however, disagrees with this, because the Gaon says, we don't do things on Yom Tov for mourning. We don't do it. So the Gaon says that it's not mourning over the temple, it's not mourning over Avraham Avinu, it's a reminder that there was a Korban Chagiga. It's not an item of mourning. Well, There's a question, should you recline when you eat the egg? Well, obviously, if it's because of mourning, you shouldn't recline. But if it recalls the Korban Chagiga, then you could recline. Now, there's another reason of mourning. And that is because it happens to be that now that we have a fixed calendar done by Hillel HaNasi, a fixed calendar every 19 years, it happens to be that there's a unique item about the calendar that the night of the first Seder is the night of the week that Tisha B'Av falls out on. So this year, Shelley, mark it down on your calendar, this year Tisha B'Av is Monday night. The Seder is Monday night. Tisha B'Av is Monday night. So that's why we eat an egg. Now, then you'll say that in the diaspora we have the second night, maybe we shouldn't eat the egg. Because Tisha B'Av is not going to be Tuesday night, but Mishmur says we eat it on the second night also. Because we got all these other reasons. Now again, that's a reason of mourning, to recall Tisha B'Av where we lost both temples and the Meraglim, and again, that would be a reason not to recline. But we're just getting started about the incredible edible egg, right? Because there's much more to the egg. We know that, to me, I always told my children that to me this is one of the main reasons why we eat an egg. You see, we also eat an egg on Shabbos. My father, Olav Shalom, used to say over from his father, Rav Meir, who was gassed by the Nazis, his Zechatzav Kodesh L'Vrachas Chusi Yogan Aleinu Hashem Yinkum Dama, he would say that Shabbos stands for Shabbos Beya Teichel, Shabbos you eat eggs, Shabbos Basa Teichel, that's Shin Bey stuff, and Shabbos B'Tzolim Teichel. So one of the reasons that we eat an egg is because of the tzaddikim that died on Shabbos. And David HaMelech died on Shabbos. Yosef HaTzadik died on Shabbos. Moshe Rabbeinu died on Shabbos. So therefore that's why we say 3 stanzas of Tzidkosra after Mincha to be matzdik adin, that we don't have tainus from losing these great people. Again, the Gaon says that's not the reason. Because Shabbos, you're not supposed to do Avelus. Avelus B'Farhesi is not allowed on Shabbos. Rather, the reason is because what does an egg symbolize? An egg symbolizes birth. What's an egg? From an egg comes a chicken. It symbolized birth. It's Shabbos, we eat eggs because that was the birth of the world, where it was Eichel HaMaaseh Bereishis. And that's the reason why we eat an egg at the Seder night. Because that's when Klal Yisrael was born as a nation. It's the anniversary of the birth of the Jewish people. So that's another reason why we eat an egg. Then, of course, we would recline. That's such a great thing. The Chassam Sofer says another reason. The Chassam Sofer says that an egg is unique. Most food, the more you cook it, the softer it becomes. You cook a carrot, it becomes soft. You cook a celery, it becomes soft. An egg, the more you cook it, the harder it becomes. And you cook it a little, it's soft-boiled. Cook it a little more, it's medium. You cook it more, it becomes hard. He says that's why Klal Yisrael was in Mitzrayim. Like the more they afflicted us, the more we increased and the more we multiplied. So Chassam Sofer says we were like an egg. The more they cooked us, the harder we became, the tougher we became. It's another reason why we eat an egg. I'll tell you another reason. I told you an egg doesn't have a seam. It's not like a barley that has a seam. It has no seam, it's seamless. That means it doesn't have a mouth. On that night, a great miracle happened. No one ever left Egypt. There were dogs all around the border. And lo yechratz kelev l'shaynai, no dog opened its mouth. And no Egyptian said, halt! That's another reason why we eat an egg. However, tonight we're going to start our shir with yet another famous reason why we eat an egg. This was all, it's already 20 minutes, I didn't get to first base. But there's another reason why we eat an egg. Because in Aramaic, an egg is called a beya. That's why in yeshiva they call it Masechtas Beya. Now really it's Masechtas Beitza. Now the reason why we don't say Beitza is because the male genitals are called Beitzim. So therefore it's not so refined. So instead we call it Beya. But Beya, it's not just that we don't pronounce the tzadi. It's because in Aramaic, it's Beis Yud Ayin, Be'ah. Be'ah means to ask. And therefore we ate the egg because since we cried out, that's why we were saved. As it says, Vanitzak el Hashem Elikei Avoseinu. We cried out to Hashem, Vayishma Hashem es koleinu. And Hashem listened to our voice. Hashem answered our praise. We were saved because we cried out. Vatal Shabbosam Elohim min Aguda. And our cries reached Hashem. What triggered and catapulted us to redemption was our tefillas to Hashem. And therefore, that's another reason, another name of Pesach, another translation of Pesach. The Targum says, Pesach is chomal, compassion. Hashem had compassion upon us because of our prayers. And by the way, we know the minig is to dip the egg in salt water. So again, why in salt water? So there are fascinating reasons. Some say the reason is because the salt water recalls the miracle that Hashem split the Red Sea, which was salty water. Some learn that way. It's interesting. That's not the accepted reason. Now again, if the eating of the egg is because of Tisha B'Av, or because of the morning that we don't have a temple, or because of the morning of Avram, so then it represents tears. But the bottom line is if the egg represents prayer, then prayer with tears is the most powerful prayer. Because Sharei Demois Lo'ininalu. The egg emphasizes that one of the tasks, and even the word opportunity is better than task. One of the opportunities of the night of the Seder is to pray to Hashem for our needs. Last week we already said from Rabbi Yeshua Mebel's, that matzah is called lechem sha'onim alav dvarim harba because it's the bread that Hashem answers us for many things. And that on the night of Ubamoira Gadol Zugili Shchina, that's the night to ask. The egg reminds us, Beya, ask. Tonight is the time to ask. Kana ben shoel. Here the son asks his father in heaven. Let me tell you something from one of the greatest Jews, for sure, one of the greatest Jews that ever set a foot on the American continent. And that's the Satmar Rebbe, Zecher Tzad V'Kodesh Brachas Chusi Yagan Aleinu. The Satmar Rebbe said a very interesting thing, that when we're living in a time where tumah surrounds us, when we're living in a time of a decadent society, when we're living in a time where the environment is perverted and corrupt, as we're living in today, no question about it, that we're living in a very decadent society, where normal boundaries, the psychologists and psychiatrists have a book of dysfunctions and many things that 10 years ago were considered to be dysfunctions were removed from that official book. And they're considered now to be completely normal and alternative acceptable behavior. We're living in a very, very decadent and perverted time. The Sama Rebbe says, when people are living in a perverted time, then Hashem answers their tefillas even if they're not on a very high level. It's a very promising thing what he says, because he infers it and extrapolates it from the pasuk, V'ata, and now he neitzakas b'nei Yisrael ba'elai. And now the cries of the Bnei Yisrael are coming to me. What does it mean, and now? And now, because they're living in such a promiscuous, decadent society like Egypt, they could ask even when they're in the 49th degree of Tumah. Now, we know, I want to show you the power of the Seder night. I want to get you excited. The power of the Seder night. I made a bracha already, Rabbi said. We know that in the table of contents of the Seder, we say Kadesh Urechatz, sanctify and wash. And that order has been questioned by sages throughout the millennia. Now, of course, that is the chronological order, that we first make Kiddush and then we wash preparatory to the karpas, because when you're going to, the custom is that before you dip a vegetable or a fruit in water, you wash your hands. And even that we don't usually do. That's why there's a vav connecting. By most of the table of contents, there's no vav. Right? It says, rachza, moitzi matzah, marar, kairech. It doesn't say moitzi matzah, umarar, rachza, umoitzi matzah. Here it says Kadesh Urechatz with a connecting vav, because it's only because we're sanctified that we do this extra chumrah of washing. So it's connected. That's all true. But what the sages are troubled about throughout the millennia is that they understand that in the table of contents, there's more than just, a step-by-step review of what we're going to do. We know, as Yesod V'Shorish Avodah says, it's Simona Milsa, and it has deep messages. So they said Kadesh Urechatz is out of order, because we have a klal, which is an ironclad klal of Avodas Hashem, a principle. Sur meira v'asei tov. First, go away from evil and then do good. Because ein lovay b'shar HaMelech b'levush sak. You shouldn't come to the king's gate dressed in sack. And as it says, U'l'rosha amar Elokim malach l'saper chukai. To the wicked person, Hashem says, I don't need you to talk to me. So usually it should be rechatz. First, clean yourself, and then kadesh. And then sanctify. This question troubled greats, like the Gadol Adar, the Noid of Yehuda. He was troubled by this. He says a rather clever answer. He doesn't need my akdama, the Noid of Yehuda, but he gives a really clever pshat. He says that, we know that when it comes to crimes, we have a very scary thing. When you do it enough times, you view it as permitted. This is a fact. I've told you this in the past, that I had a wife complain to me that her husband would get so angry that he would throw things against the wall. She said, maybe Rabbi Weiss, maybe you could talk about anger in Shul. So the next Shabbos, I spoke about anger, and I glanced at him, and he was nodding, yes, like this is a davar pashut. Here's a man that gets so angry that he throws things, he has marks on the wall from things that he's nodding. Because when a person does something enough times, they don't even realize they're doing something wrong. You know what's a great example of this? A great example of this is somebody that davens for 2.5 hours in Shul Shabbos morning, and he didn't concentrate in one word of Shachris, of Yismach Moshe b'matnas chelkai, or Musaf, or Tikanta Shabbos. He didn't even think about the Korban Musaf. He goes out of Shul and somebody asks him how was davening, and he says, great. And he means it. The Baal Tefillah was great. But he didn't have in mind a word in Shemoneh Esrei. Why doesn't it bother him? Because he's been doing that for the last 25 years. It becomes like heter. He doesn't feel anything is wrong. It's a big challenge. This is a big challenge. This is true in many areas of life. So the Noid Yehuda says, so we tell this person, you know what? You don't realize you're doing something wrong. So first, kadesh atzmecha b'mutalach. Work on doing extras. Because you need to work on doing extras. You don't realize you're doing anything wrong. And then when you become a Baal Tshuva, then you'll be able to rechatz, then you'll be able to wash yourself. Very clever pshat. However, and this is a very, very important pshat, because it's exciting. In the Moiridik Aguda called Mekarvon La Torah. It's an Aguda that came out several years ago. Mekarvon La Torah. He says that on the night of Pesach there's a special power that Hashem accepts us no matter how low we are. He says, remember, this is the night we were delivered even though we were in the 49th degree of Tumah, and if we would have stayed there a second longer, we would have been doomed. We would have been finished. So we were in the pits. So this is a night that Hashem saves people even if they're the pits. This is a night that whatever level you're on, Kadesh, you could get holy. It starts with Kadesh. And he says a remarkable proof to this. It's a remarkable proof. He says, do you think that Yitzchak didn't know who his Esav was? He never saw Esav in the Beis Medrash with Yaakov. He knew Katzti B'chaya. He knew the wives that he married, the idolatrous wives. He knew that one day he betrothed, he slept with a betrothed maiden. He knew who his Esav was. That's why he picked to give him the brachas on the night of the Seder. Because he knew that it was the night of the Seder. That's why we have the son steal the Afikomen, because that's the night that Yaakov stole the brachas from the father. That's why it's a big minig to give your children a blessing on the night of the Seder. It commemorates Yitzhak giving the brachas to Yaakov. The Mekarvon La Torah says that's why Yitzhak wanted to give the brachas to Esav. He says if there's any night that Esav could be worthy for a bracha, it's the night of the Seder that Hashem gives to everyone, even somebody at the 49.9 degree of Tumah. He brings down from the Yismach Yisrael of Alexander. The Yismach Yisrael of Alexander was a tremendous Rebbe. In Poland at his time, he was the only Rebbe that feared a huge tish on the Seder night. And when he would start the Seder in front of hordes of people, he would go to the mezuzah, kiss the mezuzah before entering in the room, and he would say, that anyone that doesn't believe that a big Russia could become a tzaddik gomer on this night of the Seder, such a person who doesn't believe that is the Russia that we talk about in the Aguda. That's what the Yisrael Yisrael. So the night of the Seder, when we talk about praying, we have to understand the tremendous schus of praying. You have to know, when we have a tremendous schus to pray, it's not just an opportunity. It's a liability. There's a very revealing Sfas Emes. Very revealing Sfas Emes. The Sfas Emes says that a betrothed maiden, a Nar Marasa, that is seduced, is put to death. Why? Al dvar asher lo yitzaka, because she didn't scream out. Says the Sfas Emes, people say, well, what could I do? I didn't understand the learning. What could I do? I had such a bad marriage. The Sfas Emes says, but you could have prayed. Why didn't you pray? Al dvar asher lo yitzaka. Well, on the night of the Seder, then for sure it's a time to pray. I'm going to tell you an interesting story. Reb Zilberstein went to Reb Elyashiv, the great Reb. We're talking about people here. We can't even understand them. They're so great. Reb Zilberstein, Shlita, who I learned so many of his svarim, that I never met him, but I consider him one of my Rebbeim. Reb Zilberstein went to Reb Elyashiv, the Gadol Adar. He went to Reb Elyashiv and said to him, there are so many boys and girls that are getting older without shidduchim. So many. And they're coming to me. And they're desperate. They're going out of their mind. What could I tell them? What could I tell them? So Rebbe Elyashiv said, tell them to pray. V'hit palel. So Reb Zilberstein didn't leave it go. Reb Zilberstein said, I told them, and they told me their mouths are dry from praying. Their palates are dry from all their praying. Their eyes don't have any tears anymore. So Rav Elyashiv said to him, La'amshich b'tfilah, they should continue praying and they'll see results. So Rav Zilberstein said he went out of there, he went to Rav Steinman. And he asked Rav Steinman, also the Gedolei Adar, told Rav Elyashiv, said to him, is that the answer? They're davening. So Rav Steinman walked over to the Svarim Shack. You see, Gedolei Adar, Gedolei Adar. So Rav Steinman walked over to the Svarim Shack and took out a Navi Malachim. And he turned the pages, and he turned the page where it talks about the woman, the Isha Achas Menashei Anavim, one of the wives of the prophets, Tza'aka el Elisha, she cried to Elisha, Leimar Avdecha Ishi Meis, my husband, your servant died. V'anoisha, and there is a creditor, Bala Kachas Eshnei Yoladai Loi La'avodim. He wants to take my two sons as his slaves. What do I do? Now we know that the Navi prayed for her, and there was the whole miracle that she put oil. He told her that as many vessels as you pour it into will fill up with oil. It was a whole miracle. But Rav Steinman showed Rav Zilberstein that there's a redak. It says, Isha achas menashean ivim tzaka, cried out. Says the Radak, she was mispalel 265 prayers before she went to Elisha. 265 prayers, the gematria of tzaka. He says, in prayer, sometimes you're expected to say a lot of prayers before you see results. We all know it says, V'eschanan al Hashem, that Moshe Rabbeinu prayed the gematria of V'eschanan, which is 515, which is also the gematria of Shira, 515. And if the Rebbeinu Shalom wouldn't have said Ravlach, Al Toisif Daber Elah, he would have gone past 515 prayers. So sometimes there's a expectation of a lot of prayer before results. But a person has to pray. And there's a golden opportunity. We know that when Yitzchak and Rivka were barren, Vayetar Yitzchak LaHashem L'noichach Ishtoi, Rashi says, what does it mean, Vayetar? Hirba v'hiftzar b'tfila. Hirba, he said multiple prayers, v'hiftzar, and he pressed. Now, this is something we have to know because it's counterintuitive. What do I mean that it's counterintuitive? It's completely counterintuitive. Because we know that if, let's say, I want something from Shelley, I could ask him once, and then I could ask him again because maybe he forgot it, he's human. But if I ask him a third time, I'm a nudge. If I ask him a fourth time, I'm a pest. If I ask him a fifth time, he's going to delete me from his, phone. Not by Hashem. It says, it's a Beferish Gemara. What should a person do if they ask and they're not answered? So the Gemara says, ask again. And it quotes a pasuk. Kaveil Hashem, hope to Hashem. Chazak v'yameitz libecha v'kaveil Hashem. If you're not answered, be strong, be courageous, and ask again. Sometimes, the Rebbeinu Shalom expects from us to connect with him multiple times. It says that Mordechai was the great man of prayer. Mordechai ben Yoir ben Shimi ben Kish. Yoir sheheir einei Yisrael b'tfilasa. He illuminated the eyes of Israel with his prayers. Shimi ben Sheshama HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'tfilasa. Ben Kish ben Shehei Kish al dal sei rachamim. He kept on banging. A big part of his shtadlus is prayer. And if we don't ask, then Hashem has a taina al dvar asher lo yitzhaka. In 1948, by the War of Independence, there was tremendous sakana for Klal Yisrael, and many people lost their lives in bombings. As a matter of fact, Rav Elyashiv lost a young daughter. That next Kol Nidre, after, of course, Klal Yisrael was saved, and we were able to live. We recovered the Kaisel. We could have been wiped out. So at Kol Nidre on Yom Kippur, it's brought down, there are 2 nights of the year that have ashpa on the year, have an influence on the whole year. On the night of Yom Kippur, it gives us yira, fear of Hashem for the whole year. And the night of the Seder gives us ava, love for Hashem, for the whole year. There's an equation between the time of Din and the Seder. So that Kol Nidre, Yom Kippur, after the war of 1948, even though he lost the daughter, Rav Elyashiv told the Kehillah that when the Yidden went to war with Midian, and they were victorious over Midian. They didn't lose a man. So they realized that they had to have a Kars HaToiv. So they brought, it says they brought a big donation. So he said, we were saved. We also have to have a Kars HaToiv. How should we show our Kars HaToiv? So he said over that Rabbi Yisrael Salanter was in Berlin. And before Kol Nidre, he said, what could we bring to Hashem? He said that if a person does not have control over his mouth, and he talks about people, he should accept upon himself one day a week not to talk about people. That's how he should start. One day a week. Tuesday, he's not talking about people. Or he said, accept an hour a day. Don't accept 3 o'clock in the morning. An hour a day. The same hour a day, he won't talk about people. That's what he said. Now, I was thinking when I learned this, that after what happened now, with 400 missiles raining down on Klal Yisrael from Iran, anybody that saw the size of these missiles know that one missile could have killed, if it was in a populated area, could have killed 100 people or more. Could have hit a school building. It could have hit a hospital. And they reached all the way till the Kaisel. There was one that went over the Temple Mount. Now, even those that made the Iron Dome and the David Slingshot only expected, at very best, if there would be absolutely no computer error and no technician error, they only expected 90%. It was 100% successful. That's miraculous. And it demands from us to show something. So I want to talk about what our response should be. So remember we said from the Yesod V'Shorish Avoda that Kadesh Urchatz Karpas Yachatz, the 15 Simonim, that many say, why in the table of contents are the 15? It corresponds to the 15 Shir Amalises in Tilim. It corresponds to the 15 Dayenus in Dayenu. And some say simply it's because the Seder night is the 15th of Nisan. This table of contents has deep significance. Actually, in an article that we'll have printed this week in the Shopper, in the Jewish Press, I quoted the fact that the table of contents, because what do we need a table of contents for? Before each thing we say, Kadesh, Urchatz, right? We have the Seder conductor that announces Kadesh, Urchatz, Karpas. What do we have to say in the beginning? So some say we do it simply that then the children could ask Manishtana before the matzah is brought. Before the dipping of the maror is brought, they could still already talk about the two dippings, because they heard the table of contents in the beginning. But there's another deeper reason. Because remember, the Seder, which is the anniversary of the birth of the Jewish people, is a time where we learn to live like a Jew. And a Jew who lives successfully should have a Seder to his life. Just like when we come to the Seder, we have mapped out exactly what we do. We have our goals. We have our ambitions. That's the way a Jew should live all the time. We don't just live People say, I live by the seat of my pants. I live by my instincts. I see what time brings. No. We have to have a roadmap. On our roadmap should be goals. Just like Kadesh Rechatz, these are our goals for the night, there should be goals. To have a happy marriage is a goal. To give proper tzedakah is a goal. To pray meaningfully is a goal. To learn enough Torah is a goal. To give honor to parents and rebbeim is a goal. To spend time with children is a goal. We have to have goals. We can't just live, haphazardly. That's not the way to live. However, that doesn't answer what I was saying. What can we do to show Hashem HaKos HaToiv for the miracle that happened to our people? And by the way, it's not just in Eretz Yisrael. If God forbid the Iranians would have been successful and they would have done terrible damage to Eretz Yisrael and to our brethren, you could be sure that it would have had ripple effects to Jews all over the world. And our enemies would feel emboldened to attack all over the place. We all have to feel grateful. So it happens to be that a great tzaddik, the Shevis Menachem, said the following amazing explanation of the roadmap of Kadesh Rechatz Karpas Yachatz. And he said as follows: Kadesh, if you want to become holy, you're rechatz, and you want to clean yourself of spiritual dirt, then the first thing is karpas. And karpas is an acronym for Klal Rishon Pesasam. The first principle is to keep your mouth shut. Like Rabbi Yisrael Salanta said, take a day, take an hour. But Klal Rishon Pesasam. Then he says, you want to go further? Yachatz Magid. Even what you have to say, have. Don't say so much, it'll get you into trouble. If Rachza, you want to clean yourself further, then Moitzi Matzah. Matzah, one of the meanings of Matzah is strife. You want to wash further, Moitzi Matzah. Get rid of all arguments between siblings, between neighbors, between workers. Moitzi Matzah. Because argument, Moror Kairech. Bitterness is wrapped in Machlokes. Machlokes is Chelik Mavas. If you do that, then Shulchan Aruch, then your table will be set. In this world, your table will be set, because Machlokes Achas Doicha Meir Parnassus. One Machlokes pushes away 100 Parnassus. But if you do that, Moitzi Matzah, then Moror Kairech. Excuse me, if you Moitzi Matzah, which is Moror Kairech, which has bitterness wrapped around it, then Shulchan Aruch, your table will be set in this world. And Safin, and what's hidden in the next world will be Baruch. You'll be blessed in the world to come. Hallel, you'll be able to sing to Hashem with the Malachim and Nirtzah, you'll be accepted. Says the Shevis Menachem, the Seder is all about that Yosef spoke a dibara, evil tidings, which catapulted us to Egypt. There we were inflicted by Paro, which we said Pei Reish Ayin Hey is the same letters as Perah, his foul mouth. Mi Hashem asher eshma b'kol lo yadati es Hashem. There we had sinners like Dasan and Aviram, who slandered Moshe Rabbeinu, who said, now I know why we're being punished. And we only were saved when Pesach, when our mouth speaks properly. on this night, when we could ask Hashem for everything, and we're fulfilling the mitzvah of Igar to Levincha, and we're doing such wonderful things with Haggadah, we have to kasher our mouths. Like the Manchester Shiva said, before we say Baruch Shama, we say, Areini Mizamen Espi. I prepare my mouth, right, to praise Hashem. He says, how do you prepare your mouth? Now, it's true, you could use Listerine, which is a good idea, to get rid of the ririn shebepeh. But he says the true preparing of the mouth is if you want to shiva your mouth, it can't be a mouth that has vulgar speech or lies or lashon hara or revealing secrets. That's Pesach. That's the night that the mouth talks. I'm going to tell you a few things now, although it's late, but they're very important. One is, we have a klal that kevan she'avid ba mitzvah chad yavad ba mitzvah achrita. Once you do one mitzvah with something, you should try to do another mitzvah with it. So, for example, when we make an Erev Tafshilin before Yom Tov, if it falls out that we need to prepare for Shabbos, so we make an Erev Tafshilin, so we eat the Erev Tafshilin by Shalosh Shudas on Shabbos, because we say, Kevin the Ovid Ba Mitzvah Chada, since we did one mitzvah with it, the bracha of the Erev Tafshilin, we should also do another mitzvah by eating it by the Shalosh Shudas. Or another example of this is people take their lulav and use it by biur chametz. Since they did the mitzvah of lulav with it, they want to use it for the fuel to burn the chametz. You want to have a special mouth for the Seder, a special mouth for V'hisha Amda and Dayenu and Chasal Siddur Pei. So you want to have a special mouth? Then before Pesach, tell your wife nice things. Compliment your wife. Tell her what a remarkable woman she is. Look at this house is clean and it's such a beautiful Seder. Oh, once you did one mitzvah with the mouth, you could do other mitzvahs with the mouth. On the other hand, if you use the mouth to scream, how could you expect it to succeed in asking Hashem? Ein kateger nasa saneger. The prosecutor can't become a defender. It's interesting that the Chidah in the Moira Etzbah speaks about an obvious thing. He speaks about how whenever there's great opportunities, the Yetzer Hara pulls out all stops to frustrate us. Whenever there are great opportunities, the Yetzer Hara's job is to try to stop us. And he says that's why we have to be very careful by the night of the Seder not to get angry. It's a frustrating time. This one is hungry, they want to go fast. This one said, what do you mean? We want to talk. It's the only time of the year. You could have, I heard terrible things that wives would ask their husbands for afikomen in front of the children that they should be nicer to them. A terrible thing. Even if the husband is not nice. But to do that in front of all the children, that's, the Yetzer Hara pulls out all stops. I have to tell you a story. It's a remarkable story. One of the great Hasidic masters, tonight we really enjoyed thoughts from the greatest of the great. So one of the great Hasidic masters was Rabbi Aaron Mikarlin. He had a chashuv, disciple, Rav Bertza. It was a very chashuv Karliner chassid. So Rav Bertza left the house, and they were mekayim shulchan aruch. They had the table set, everything was beautiful, sparkling, everything was... He goes to Shul, and as a Karliner chassid, they daven with, like the Klosmer Rebbe said, he daven with his full bren. In the meantime, his wife goes to light the candles. And as she's stepping back from lighting the candles, she trips. And in order to save her fall, she wasn't that young, she grabbed a hold of the tablecloth. And as she fell, she pulled the whole table with her. And everything fell. The matzahs cracked, the glasses broke, the wine spilled, and everything was mixed with glass. And here she was already finished. She, did the mad dash to have everything perfect. She looked at it, she didn't even have the strength to cry. She just went into the bedroom and went to sleep. Her husband comes home to a churban. He looks, and the table is bare, and all over is strewn colored red matzah, broken glass, shattered plates. He took a big breath, and he called out, Guten Yantiv. And his calm voice was the straw that broke the camel's back for his wife. It just triggered her. Calm at a time like this, she came out. You left the chair there, I tripped, it's all your fault, look at this mess over here. He smiled, he kneeled down and started picking up the remnants and said, we could still have a beautiful Seder. Let's just do with what we can. And his calm voice calmed her down, and he had a beautiful Seder. Later on, after midnight, by the Karliner Seder, with hundreds of Hasidim, and the Rebbe said all kinds of esoteric Torah and all kinds of... After the Rebbe finished, the Rebbe had Ruach HaKodesh, the Rebbe said, Rabbi Isai, our Seder tonight, nish kasha, not bad. But Rabbi Isai, my Talmud, the Bertzer Rav, his Seder, he didn't explain why, but he said, his Seder made a rash in the Ilam Yisrael Yainim, made a tumult in the upper worlds. Because we have to know that our job is to overcome the hurdles. Shouldn't be surprised if there's hurdles. All of a sudden, the night of the Seder, a person has a terrible headache. That one Seder, I made Kiddush, and afterwards I had a cappuccino. I had a very bad headache. I didn't make a shackle because wine, patters, all mashkin. The Yetzer Hara can challenge us. It's our job to overcome the challenges. But let's remember, if we're looking for something to do to show Akaras HaTayv for the miracles in Eretz Yisrael, Karpas, Klal Rishon Pes Asam, Yachatz Magid. If you have to, what you have to say, divide in half. Rachzi, you want to wash more? Moitzi Matzah, get rid of the fighting. Because Mara Kaira, his bitterness is wrapped up. If you do that, Shulchan Aruch, the table will be set in this world. Tzafon Baruch, the future, the hidden part in the next world will be blessed. Halal Nirtzah. I want to thank everybody for joining us. A special thank you to our sponsors, Jacob and Jenny Morrison Wood from the UK, Yitzi Fuchs, our anonymous sponsor, and our second anonymous sponsor for the shidduchim of her child and her niece, If you would like to sponsor a share, 718-916-3100, rmmwsi@aol.com. Let me take the opportunity to wish everybody a wonderful Pesach, and we should be Zaycha to see the Gula Shlema b'mher v'yameinu.